Of course, Greg Williams, he looks a little bit nervous out there at the moment, Shane.
Well, it's not to be too surprised about that, Al. He's a great footballer. He's playing now in his second grand final in a row. His side were thrashed by Eagle Hawk on this ground this time last year. The Borough went on to a most convincing grand final win. In fact, our last two grand finals have been very one-sided. Sandhurst beating Castlemaine in 1981 by over 10 goals, and last year Eagle Hawk, with one of the most impressive grand final wins I can remember, gave Golden Square a real thrashing. I'm sure that'll be in the minds of those blue and gold boys, Richard, and Peter Crosley certainly doesn't like going down 2 years in a row, and I'm sure that'll be really something they'll be aiming to forget quickly as they can today.
I'm sure they will, Shane. Peter Crosley's got a fine coaching record, of course, having started off here in 1977. There go the boys on the lap of honour. Lee Trethown, by the way, is a player of the future. A great player with Castlemaine, Lee. His father Brian's in the coaching job down at Castlemaine as the Dragons burst out through the banner. First team onto the ground in the grand final. And talking about centre men, I noticed when I was over in the rooms about just before 2 o'clock, Coach Dennis O'Hare deep in conversation with centreman Frankie Coughlin, who was on the rubbing down table, and obviously giving him a few last-minute tips on what to do with Greg, or how to play on Greg Williams.
There's the lineup as we see it on the screen, as Sandhurst will probably line up. There may be some last-minute changes, but the Sandhurst boys weren't supposed to come out for another few minutes. They're obviously very, very keen, and they wanted to get out on the ground and have a good warm-up.
Richard, I can't see McAvale playing on a wing, and I certainly can't see Gooch playing on a wing. I'd imagine those two half-forward flankers in Stephen Road and young Kevin Walsh will probably move up to the wings, and I wouldn't be surprised to see McAvale perhaps go to the bench, and don't be surprised to see Greg Hull start in the 18. What do you think about that centre line as it looks at the moment?
Well, that's very dicey, Shane. I quite agree. I expect to see Stephen Rose selected this morning in the Patches All-Star team on the ground. There's Golden Square through the banner, led by big Percy Adlam, the skipper. He's trying to get rid of the banners as he came through there. Percy, of course, has a big task today playing in the first ruck against Big Bill Nolder. One thing I must have mentioned when I was in the Sandhurst rooms, there was about 3 or 4 extra players apart from the 20, not only in the Guernseys and the socks and shorts ready for the game, but already rubbed down. So I don't know whether we'll have to try and see just how many Sandhurst have got out on the field.
And here come the umpires onto the ground now, Richard, and certainly a great thrill for two of the most promising umpires in Central Victoria.
Yes, Rod Threlfall, observed by a BFL umpires advisor, Clive Philp, not Clive Philp, his name's Philp, I forget his first name just offhand, but he was observed by that particular gentleman during the season and was given the nod as being capable of umpiring VFL reserve grade. The other umpire is Warren Wigmore, 23, very popular figure in Bendigo football, Wiggy, and he's got a big task, of course, with Rod Threlfall today. They're going to do their warm-up lap now as they go.
Well, Warren's the blonde-headed laddie, and the darker one is, of course, Rod Threlfall. Wish them both. They're only 23, 24 years of age, and they've got a great job. And, of course, this is great history-making event for the Bendigo Umpires Association. In past years, of course, the VFL has supplied the umpiring panel for this traditional day. But, of course, we've seen the introduction through the new Board of Management, passing down, giving the local people a go, and the Bendigo Umpires Association have officiated in all games in the Bendigo League this year, and they've done so with pride. And Richard, they must be commended on the effort they've put into the umpiring here in Central Victoria this year.
Yeah, very professional body, the Bendigo Umpires Association, under the leadership of Ashley Donaldson, the president, and their advisor Paul McCaskill. They take the task very seriously, and I think viewers will notice today how efficient not only the central umpires will be, but the goal umpires. The goal umpires march in unison off the ground at the breaks. They're very, very professional in their approach, and they're probably the best umpiring and best equipped umpiring body outside Melbourne.
Well, this ground in magnificent order, and Richard, I'd like to get a comment from you regarding the goal-scoring end of the QEO today, because in the reserves and in the thirds, it appeared the Barnard Street end was producing a lot of goals, although they're kicking against the breeze.
Yes, that's often a strange phenomenon on the QEO, Alan. Quite frequently during the season and in past seasons, we've seen that even though the wind favours the city end goals, players seem to get an extra spurt on knowing that, and more goals are scored the Barnard Street end. We won't know, of course, for the first 10 or 15 minutes to see how the thing pans out.
I'd imagine both sides at the moment would be suffering rather greatly from nerves and plenty of adrenaline pumping, Alan.
My word, there's been a terrific build-up to this match, and well, Golden Square, they were very disappointed a fortnight ago when they were thrashed by Sandhurst, and they came out last week and they were a great new side, and I think that the key to this game is going to be the players on the ball. Now, if Adlam and Patterson and also Johnny Williams can take Big Bill Nolder, who's going to be on his own in the ruck there for Sandhurst today, if they can take him apart, well, it's certainly going to be an interesting match, because Adlam and Patterson dominated the game against South Bendigo, and I think that they actually won the game for Golden Square last weekend.
I think you might see that big Gary Kerwin, number 41 for Sandhurst, does a fair amount of ruck work for Sandhurst, Alan, when the ball's in the forward line for the Dragons. Gary Kerwin missed the preliminary final last week. He had an ulcer or a boil on his foot and was not able to play. We will be watching with interest, of course, to see where exactly he does line up, because he's selected in the forward pocket, but he's played a lot of the year at centre-half forward. He has the height. He was a ruckman, of course, for many years with Sandhurst, and he has the height to combat the tall timber from Golden Square when the ball does get into that forward line for the Dragons.
Well, the big player for Sandhurst, of course, is Billy Nolder, and viewers right throughout our central Victorian area would know Billy, because he's played a lot of football with a lot of clubs, and I believe originally he comes from up at the Lalbert area in the wheat-growing country around Swan Hill. So Billy's had a colourful career in country football around central and northern Victoria, and maybe this could be his last grand final.
Wouldn't surprise me. He's certainly, your comment about Adlam and Patterson, Alan, the way they dominated the preliminary final last week holds true, but no more true than the fact that Nelda dominated the second semi-final against those two very same players, and Golden Square are obviously going to be looking for a lift from those two players. We mentioned Kerwin was back into the side after missing the second semi through injury. Young Paul Bow is in the same boat, the little rover, first rover for Sandhurst. He missed that game through injury too, so there could be a couple of fitness worries with the Sandhurst side. And Johnny Williams comes back into the side. He's ruck roving for the Square today. He comes back in after missing the preliminary final through suspension. So I think both sides just about at full strength.
Richard, how do you see the role of Johnny Williams today?
Well, that's going to be interesting. The word during the week was, Alan and Shane, that John Williams would be playing in the first ruck and boring straight in on the opposing trio facing him at the centre bounce. Now, what exactly Coach Crosley and the Brains Trust for Sandhurst have got in mind, for Golden Square have got in mind for big Johnny Williams, we won't know, will we, for the next until the next couple of minutes have elapsed, and we've seen just exactly where he lines up and what he does.
We'll be watching carefully the interchange bench too, Richard, because I've got a feeling there could be a couple of red herrings in that Sandhurst selection, as I mentioned to you, and we'll keep our eyes very carefully on the two players who trot over to the interchange bench with Dennis O'Hare, because I think the 18 that Sandhurst start with could be a very, very important decision, whether in fact they play young Hull on the ball. He's an experienced grand final player, and he'll certainly give the Dragons a lift around that forward line. Of course, a lot of these players from both sides are playing in their first grand final, and there'll be plenty of early nerves in this first 15 minutes, where of course a game can often be won or lost.
Statistician Neville Klein's just told us, Shane, that he's checked through the Sandhurst team. There are only 20 players there, so that must have been some sort of a blind by them in the rooms. I don't quite know what it was for, but there were certainly 22 players in, 23 players actually in jumpers and all togged up ready.
Richard, how important will the toss be for this grand final?
Well, it could be crucial, Alan, in the initial stages. Sandhurst believe they've got to get away early and start much more constructively than they did in the second semi-final a fortnight ago against this same Golden Square team. Now, here they are going towards the centre there. Now, there's Kent Ward there in the centre of the ground with Mick Lenigan. Kent Ward is the small, dark-headed player near the two central umpires coming out towards us here, number 43, and now he's in the centre square. He was originally picked in the forward pocket. Now, there's Mark McAvale's down on the half-forward line. And Kevin Walsh is coming out here on the wing, looks like, Shane, as we thought. He's going to pick up Malcolm the Falcon Cowling, number 11 for Golden Square.
Now, what you'll find, I think, is that Ward is taking the first roving role, and that Paul Bow will go to be second rover. We'll just pick that up in a moment for you. Greg Hull is on the field. Paul Bow may be the player, in fact,